Hi guys, we're going to try to go live again. I'm Nicole Baxter with the City of Citrus Heights, and I'm here today interviewing our Chief of Police, Ron Lawrence. So if you caught the first minute of this, this is going to be a little repeat. But Chief, I'd love for you to explain a little bit about your background and what it means to be the Chief of Police.
Sure. Over 30 years in policing. I've been a police chief for about 9 years in 2 different cities. I've served the city of Citrus Heights for about 3.5 years, and it's been a real honor to do so. The role of the police chief is unique in that I'm the chief executive officer of the police department, responsible for all the hiring and firing, all the personnel issues, all the staffing, responsible for about a $21 million budget. The chief of police sets the vision for the organization, makes sure that we are responding to the community's concerns and needs. Ensure that we have a vision that fights crime and traffic reduction, traffic collision reduction, and make sure that we keep our city safe.
Well, I know that our community really loves the police department, so thank you for your leadership, and that vision I think is really being recognized, and we appreciate it. So today we did want to talk about your exciting crime stat report. So you presented some numbers to council, and why don't you walk us through some of those highlights?
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm very excited about the crime stats. The reality is in 2019, we go by calendar year. So in 2019, in Citrus Heights, we reduced crime by 9%, which is remarkable because it's on the heels of 2018, we reduced crime by 10%. And if you look at our entire department history, we became a police department in 2006, actually in June of 2006. If you look at the span of the history of our police department, you can see here by this chart, from 2007 through 2019, that we have reduced crime by 38.9% in that span of time, in just about 15 years. That's a remarkable story because this really paints a picture of why it's important for a local community to have their own police department. This is indicative of a focused effort on crime reduction and traffic collision reduction in our city. And we couldn't do it without the relationships we have with our community because we rely on them to trust us, to believe in us, to call us, and to really be our partners. So while the police department's proud of these crime stats, the whole community should actually be proud of these crime stats because it's really a team effort with us and the community. And when I say crime stats, these are what we call Part 1 crimes. They're what I call the Big 8. The person crimes are homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And then the property crimes are burglary, arson, larceny, which is theft, and I'm missing one, burglary. These crime stats, every agency in the United States sends to the Department of Justice, the FBI, who collate the crime stats throughout the United States. And so these are our numbers. This is our scorecard, if you will.
Yeah. So you talked about double digits last year, almost double digits this year. I mean, that's got to be record-setting levels of crime reduction while you've been the chief of police, right?
Well, not just me, too. My predecessor. So over that span of time, almost 40% crime reduction is pretty remarkable. And it's not me as the police chief, it's my team, the people I hire, the people who work with me, the men and women of the Citrus Heights Police Department, and the people in our community really working together to make Citrus Heights the absolute best it can possibly be. And the other thing that's remarkable about this is that in Citrus Heights, when we incorporated, this city really fought hard to become its own city. And we did so on a budget that was really streamlined and pretty slim. And I'm proud to say that we've been able to function as a city, not just a police department, but the entire city, on some very small margins when it comes to our budget. We're extremely frugal with the taxpayer dollars. We absolutely work hard to do the best job we can with the resources we have. This is an indication that we're doing a good job.
Absolutely. And I know this was one slide in the presentation you gave to council, and that there were some other highlights, including keeping response times low. And I was really impressed with that because you explained that that's not a 911 call. That's a response to, someone reporting a burglary. How has the department been able to keep those response times relatively low?
Well, this is pretty remarkable because you'd think that the police chief dictates how things are done and tells people how to do things. But what happened was our team, our patrol officers and our dispatchers actually came to my executive team and said they wanted to make some changes. And they recommended changing the geographical beat boundaries as well as how we deploy our resources in the streets. And so we changed our shift configurations to deploy resources at the best peak times. Okay. So we take the time to look and see how crime trends are spiking, what time of day, what day of the week, what weeks of the month have the most crimes in what areas of our city. And it allows us to very strategically deploy resources where they're needed the most. And that's because of our troops coming to us with these ideas. And I'm proud of them because this was a line level idea that really championed crime reduction in Citrus Heights.
That's great. What a great example of working with what you've got and kind of empowering your team to bring good ideas to you.
Yeah, and a byproduct, as you mentioned, was it actually reduced our response time. So not only were we able to drive down crime, but by deploying resources more smartly, we were able to actually reduce the amount of time it takes us to get to calls for service.
And I know that's something that our residents definitely feel. When you call and it's 5 minutes quicker for someone to get to you, that's a big difference.
Sure.
So that's great.
And it should be. And I should note too that any police department prioritizes calls for service. So one might have been burglarized and there's no suspects on scene, and they're wondering why a police officer is not responding right then. Well, it might be because we have a robbery in progress across town, and so we have to really triage our calls for service and make sure that we respond in an appropriate manner to the ones that are in progress. So that still does play a factor.
Sure, that's that strategy, right? You got to use the resources that you've got and address kind of high level things and then work your way down. That's right. Great. That's a great way to think of things. I know another issue that's very top of mind for everyone is fighting gang and drug violence. And you had talked briefly about the youth programs here. Could you go into a little bit more about how that plays into gang violence?
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about that because our approach here at Citrus Heights has been a long-term investment in our kids, our youth, the youth in this community. We have our Police Activities League program, which targets middle school-age kids. We've got our Explorer program, which targets kids in high school age. We've got our Mesa Verde Pathway program, where we have police officers in the classroom public safety pathway program, as well as our school resource officers. And the intent being, we allow an opportunity for kids to have a positive role model, to see opportunities for themselves in their long-term future, beyond high school, to go to college, to go into the military, opportunities that they might not have ordinarily seen. And it's that type of activity, that proactive approach to showing them a positive pathway in life that prevents them or keeps them from getting into gangs, because it gives them a positive alternative. So that's our long-term strategy, and it's working. I'm very proud to say that we've had a lot of successes.
That's great. So then on the other end of that, I've heard Commander Turcotte speak on it a couple times that, there might not be gang violence now, but it's because you're keeping an eye on it. Can you talk about, so you've got the proactive approach and then kind of the reactive approach?
That's right. We are extremely proactive about going towards our youth and our long-term programs, but also reactive to those crimes that are in progress. If we have any suggestion or hint that we've got a gang problem, we address it immediately and very quickly. That's a top priority for us, because we want to prevent that from taking hold in our community. We want to prevent it from taking roots. So we make sure that we attack that problem quickly and assertively, and make sure that we don't allow that to happen in our community.
And then I know another highlight that you were excited to talk about was the new rental housing inspection unit. So I wanted to back up a little bit and have you explain what a full service police department means, and then maybe touch on a few of the newer division and departments that you're excited about.
Yes, in Citrus Heights, we are what's called a full-service police department. So that means that we have everything. 24-hour patrol and dispatch services, our own 911 communications center. We have our own detectives, our own SWAT team. We have our own code enforcement and problem-oriented policing units that address things like homelessness, illegal camping, things like that, quality of life issues. So we're what's called a full-service police department. New to the department in the last few years is animal control. So we have animal services in the field. Code enforcement, new to code enforcement is our rental housing inspection program, which allows us to have a real strong partnership with landlords and tenants in our city to make sure that we have positive relationships between landlords and tenants, because it's been our experience that sometimes that's a disjointed relationship.
Sure.
So we want to make sure that we have the best living environment for our tenants as possible, and that we ensure that our landlords are keeping their properties up and up to code. We've had over 1,500 inspections and different violations that we were allowed to go back and fix and have landlords fix. And it's been good, because now the tenants feel safer in their homes, they feel more comfortable in that environment, and they know that they have a place to reach out to and talk to us.
Well, and that's a substantial portion of our population here in Citrus Heights too. So it's wonderful that you guys have been able to stand up this new division, and it's working. You said 15,000?
Yes.
Wow.
No, 1,500.
1,500. Okay.
Yes, about 15,000 rentals in the city. So it's a significant amount of our percentage in our population, and so it's important to us that we create a positive living environment for our tenants.
That's awesome. And you mentioned in there the Navigator program as one of the departments here. So we know that homelessness and addressing that issue is really top of mind. And you recently wrote a guest article on the topic, and I'd love for you to talk about kind of start at the state level, homelessness, and your take on that. And then if you could kind of drill down and explain to our viewers the approach that we're taking here in the city.
Yeah, well, homelessness is a good example of statewide policies that have affected local communities. There have been a lot of issues that have happened at the state level that impacted local communities, unfunded mandates, for example. And homelessness at the statewide level, there's estimates of about 159,000 people homeless in the state of California. Here in Sacramento County alone, that number is about 3,600 that are unsheltered. I'm talking about on the street now. And so it's a big problem statewide. Now, we're fortunate in Citrus Heights. We have some good programs and good philosophies that are working. Our numbers in 2018 were at about 191 homeless, and in 2018 we were able to bring that number down to about 163. So we have about 163 homeless, and this is an estimate because this population ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But our philosophy here, and I should mention, every local community has a totally different philosophy and approach when it comes to homelessness. And because it is left to the local communities largely to deal with, it's important that communities stay on top of these things. So our approach here in Citrus Heights is working. We have a two-pronged approach. The first approach is our Navigator program to go out and identify as many of our homeless population as we possibly can and try to understand their individual and unique situation, because every person's different. Many of them are suffering from depression, some of them from severe mental illness, some of them are suffering from drug addiction or alcohol addiction, some of them are veterans, and so we try to get them into short-term housing, long-term housing, but more appropriately the right programs that are going to meet their specific needs, whether it's mental health or drug addiction. And so we try to get them to get into these programs on their own volition. We invite them to improve their life and get into take a step up so that they can have a sustainable life, because that's really what we want them to have, long-term healthy sustainability, which is better for our community. And that's working. In the last 2 years, 2018, 2019, our Navigators housed 311 people.
That's
that is
amazing.
It is amazing. It's 311 people housed in 2 years is pretty remarkable. So it's working. Now the downside is there are people who are homeless who we call service resistant. They refuse to get any help. They're going to refuse all kinds of services. And there's some of those that are out there committing crimes. And so our second prong to our approach is those who are committing crimes, we hold accountable. So our POP unit, our problem-oriented policing unit goes through, and after we've exhausted every measure we possibly can to get them into housing or programs, then if they're committing crimes, then we'll hold them accountable. And that means illegal camping, for example, the tent cities or the tents that are set up. Those are not legal in Citrus Heights, and so we make sure we post those, and in the process of trying to get them into the right shelter, we'll actually take those camps out if it's on public property. If it's on private property, the property owner is responsible for the cleanup.
Sure. And if you're just joining us, I'm Nicole Baxter with the City of Citrus Heights, and I'm here today interviewing our Chief of Police, Ron Lawrence, and we are diving into homelessness. And you just kind of covered our two-prong approach here at the city. And I also wanted you to briefly talk about the pressures that are kind of coming down from the state level. So you wrote about this in your article. There's an assumption that it might be an affordable housing issue, but I feel like your perspective is that there are many other factors at play here that kind of have led to this homelessness issue that we're seeing in the state.
Governor Newsom's State of the State address talked about unaffordable housing or expensive housing, and that we have a housing crisis. And that may be true. Housing in California is expensive. There's no doubt about that. But at the core, before we talk about housing, the real issues that we need to get to with regards to homelessness are much more complex than just housing. Yes, housing is a component for sure. Shelters is definitely a component, bed space. But at the core of those individuals who are homeless out there, and our troops see it day in and day out, I mentioned it before. You've got people dealing with suffering from mental illness, some vulnerable populations suffering from mental illness, some people who are suffering from drug addiction that really need the right help. And what happened was, over the course of the last 9 years, starting with prison realignment and then Prop 47 and Prop 57, these state-level policies and mandates and propositions have changed such that we now don't have the same tools that we used to have to get these folks into the right programs. For example, Prop 47 reduced the possession of drugs from felonies to misdemeanors. And I'm talking about hardcore drugs, cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin. Those used to be felonies. They're now misdemeanors. The intent was well placed, I think. The intent was to decriminalize, or at least to make them not felonies so that we didn't throw people in jail. But that missed the reality of the narrative. The reality was people that were found in mere possession of drugs, yes, they went to jail, and the criminal justice system found them into court-mandated drug rehabilitation programs. They never went to prison. They got drug-mandated drug rehab programs. And they get on probation, and part of the probation would be to get clean and sober, with the intent that they become productive members of society. Nobody wants them in jail. We just want them to get help, get clean and sober, and so that they can lead sustainable lives. When Prop 47 reduced those to misdemeanors, that really put a challenge on how we dealt with drug addiction in California. And so that's part of the challenge that we face right now. That and of course, a lack of available bed space for those suffering from mental illness. There's no real place to take them. And so the people that really need help, they're out there on our streets, this vulnerable population. Our police officers are in this weird spot that they've got no place to take them. So it is a lot more complicated than just affordable housing, as you can see.
And it's kind of an example of those decisions, well intended at the state level, kind of rolled down to putting some serious pressure on our local level here. You know, you've got a good approach to homelessness, but it sounds like there are several factors at play there.
Right. I think our approach in Citrus Heights is working. The numbers would suggest it's working. I think it's the best approach, but we only do so much with the resources we have available to us. As I mentioned, our resources are pretty thin, so we can do as best we can with the resources we have. But under the shadow of these state mandates and state takeaways, it's a real challenge for us to continue to provide that level of service without some type of help.
Yes. And so that kind of leads us into the next point I wanted to cover. So the city is currently undertaking its largest survey effort in history. And you and our city manager have really been pushing out participation in this. And why is it important for us to hear from residents on their priorities in Citrus Heights?
Well, Citrus Heights was really incorporated by the people. The people of this city wanted so desperately to be their own city. And since day one, since 1997, this city prides itself on being hard-charging, hard-working people who know what they want. They want local control. They want to make sure that they drive their own destiny and that they define their own future. We don't let the state define our future. We don't let other communities define our future. Citrus Heights defines our future. That's in our city DNA. And so this juncture we're at right now is the city council and the city manager's opportunity to reach out to the community and find out what do they see as their desire for this city moving forward. What do they see as our top priorities for Citrus Heights moving forward? What is our destiny in 2020, 2021? What's the future of Citrus Heights look like? And I think it's an exciting time. This is an exciting survey. Some of the top things that have percolated up are, of course, continuing to respond to public safety and having public safety well funded, response times, homelessness, addressing the homelessness issue, ensuring the government remains transparent and accountable, which we have always been, and we pride ourselves on being transparent and accountable, ensuring that we maintain school safety at our schools, and ensuring that we continue to fight gangs and illegal activity like drugs and gangs.
Yeah, huge priorities there. So if you haven't taken our survey yet, please go to chpriorities.net and take that, and we will drop that link into the comments section below after this. I think you've covered a lot of great information here today, so I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview. If you have more comments, please comment below and we'll address them after this. Stay tuned. We will have another Facebook Live next month, and thank you for joining us.